Hey everyone, welcome to today's media call, and thank you for having an interest in covering Major League Wrestling for a very big moment, very big milestone for the league, as well as for our talent, our fans, and appreciate all the coverage you've given us since we restarted in 2017. It's surreal to think that it was just 4 years ago yesterday that we kicked this thing off in a small nightclub in Orlando, and to see how the landscape in wrestling has changed. And it's such an exciting time in wrestling to have our own exciting moment inside that timeline is a thrill for us. And we really are excited about Fightland tomorrow night on Vice TV, and all the new faces, all the new eyes that fans are going to see with the show. And with that, I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions, so we'll kick this off.
All right, thanks, Court. So let's start off here with Nick Hossman. Nick, are you ready to go?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me, Court?
Hey, Nick, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Congratulations, Court. Very excited to see MLW Fightland on Vice TV tomorrow night. I believe we might even have a little representation, which is always nice. Yeah, I wanted to ask, with the TV over at Vice TV, how close are we to seeing like a weekly, maybe even live MLW series on Vice TV, or maybe somewhere else even?
Yeah, we are definitely having different conversations. And right now, I mean, in terms of future projects and stuff, a lot of things are on the whiteboard. Right now, we're just focused on this show and kicking off what we think can be some exciting stuff down the road. And yeah, I think this is a big moment for the company when it comes to what's on the other side of this. Live? Is it, more weekly? Is it documentary stuff? Is there a show where there's just a news formatted show? Because one of the unique things about Fightland is a new format. For 25 years, wrestling's had the same format. And prior to that, you think about the 70s. Okay, it evolved into a different format in the early to mid 80s with syndication and regional television. Then it evolved again when we went national with cable. Then it evolved again during the Monday Night War era. And it hasn't really evolved in a long time. And so when we were looking at this with Vice, we were thinking, we'd love to do something that kind of is a little different. And with their programming really leaning towards news and documentary narrative content, this was an opportunity for us to tap into something that I think a lot of fans enjoy. And that's the news, the breaking news, the transactional elements of wrestling, that you're watching wrestling, but on your phone, you're also seeing what's the latest gossip, what's the latest news, who's going here, who's going there. And for us to tap into that, I think is important. I did some research, and then you look at, yes, the leagues, all these different companies, yes, they track very well in Google Trends. But if you look at the wrestling news and the searches there that they're connected there, it's off the charts. It really is. Like, the wrestling news sites may make more money than some of these leagues. It's pretty wild. So we're like, let's tap into that. And let's give our news segment autonomy to just cover the biggest stories of the day. That could feature MLW, that could feature other companies. It might be good or bad for MLW, but let's give them editorial control and see where it takes us. I might be crazy for doing that, but I also got to do something different. I'm battling two billionaires, so I have to be inventful. I have to try different things. And I'm pretty excited to see what people think of what's kind of like a halftime show, like you see on the NBA, where you have Shaq and Barkley talking news with analysts and insiders. This is what that's going to be when it comes to embedded, which is going to be kind of at the halfway point of Fightland tomorrow night.
Cool. If I could follow up real quick, there's obviously a lot of great talent you guys have recruited. I mean, Bobby Fish in the mix, having Davey Richards is back. EJ Unduka, big fan of his as well. But there's a lot of big names out there right now. In particular, Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt seem to be sitting off in this ether. What do you think about the fact those guys are even free agents? And have you had any conversations with them about working with MLW?
So we had conversations with Bray's brother. Right now, I think he seems more interested in, I guess he's farming. So I understand having to recharge you get recharged for another run. But right now it seems like he's more interested in doing some farming, and I don't knock him for it. And we did talk with Braun Strowman for a little bit and didn't come to terms with him on a deal. I can't say where they're going to be headed or not. I don't really know. But we're looking and evaluating talent all the time and see if it's a good fit from a product point of view with our fans. Will it mesh? And what we've noticed is there are some names that are big stars, high profile guys, and they come in, they're embraced by our fans. But there's others that are like, yeah, we know they're buzzy, they're coming from a big company, but and then they're not, this isn't their jam. So it's a really delicate thing. It's like, you're a chef and these certain ingredients will work, certain ones won't. And every scenario is different. And so we look at our roster. We have about 90% of our roster signed, but I like to have 5 to 10% that's open for payroll for budget that we can then have flexibility, create new matchups. Sometimes it's just a fresh 2 to 3 month commitment and it's a handshake deal. And at the end of that, they go off and go to another company. Maybe we help them and enrich their negotiating position and they can do something else somewhere else. That's fine. Sometimes we'll present them with a contract and sign them. So it's nice having that flexibility just to try things out. Sometimes guys will come in very motivated to show the world that the other company, slept on them. And sometimes they'll come in kind of broken by the other company and it doesn't work out because they're just not in a good headspace. So it gives us some time to kind of test the waters.
Cool. Thank you very much, Court. Looking forward to the show tomorrow night.
Thanks, Nick.
Great. Thanks, Nick. All right. Next, we're going to go over to Sean Rossap. Sean, are you there?
I am here. Court, thanks for taking the time to do this. You've been very outspoken about the two top guys in MLW, Fatu and Hammerstone, and about how WWE sort of passed on them.
Yeah.
That had to be a shock to you because it was it's always a question that pops up in one of their interviews or something like that. And I liked Richard Holliday's answer to say, well, I've got an MLW look. I don't have to have a WWE look. How did you react when there wasn't a major overture or offer made to either one of these? And do you know if they had any discussions? And as a promoter, how did it feel to lock those guys up, knowing that they're marquee stars?
Yeah, it certainly, it does shock you sometimes. But then when I was at WWE, you'd see guys that they really weren't interested in. You almost had to beg them to sign. Like CM Punk, great example. When I was there, they were like, first thing, they're like, nah, I don't think he's a good fit. At best, he's a cruiserweight. I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, trust me. Don't just think about him in a different way. And then they sign him and like, well, they end up doing they did like a pop rock kind of like 80s gimmick with him. They try it out in a few dark matches, I think with Mickey James. I'm like, what is happening? This is so far removed from the guy with the AFI music coming out a few months earlier. And so sometimes they just don't see it culturally or from a talent perspective. They had a few looks at Hammer. They had a few looks at Fatu for people to think, oh, they wouldn't sign Fatu because he had pre-existing issues. So did MVP. It didn't stop them. They just didn't see it for whatever reason, which is insane to me. But their criteria at the time, I can't speak to it. But they also let EJ Nduka go. And he is a world-class athlete, but even a world-class person away from wrestling, just a wonderful guy, great role model, great representative. I'm like, how did this fall into my lap? Because the second he became a free agent, I was told, dude, trust me, sight unseen, sign this guy. He's that good. This is from people that I have friends in the industry that knew him. And like, I really wasn't that familiar with him because he'd just been at the PC. But I was told he's special. And yes, EJ Nduka is special. So I think that just happens sometimes in wrestling. But what happens also is then there's an appreciation for the people that did see it in them, that did give them a break, and they do thrive in that system. And that's why guys like Fatu and Hammer have re-upped. We took time during the pandemic when we weren't running to try to help these guys out a different way financially and offer them new, better deals because we were getting better deals. And I always say, if you come in here and we grow, we're going to grow together. And so we were closing deals at the time with like DAZN, and we were able to do things for the guys. We offered them better opportunities to restructure their deals. And they were really good about it. They were really interested in it because I think they saw that we believed in them and we were willing to back it up. And we made good that, hey, when we can pay you more, we're gonna turbocharge that deal.
Thank you all.
Great. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, next up, let's go to Marie Shadows. Marie, are you there?
Hi, you guys can hear me?
Hi, Marie.
Hey, thanks for taking the time to do this media call. It's amazing. So I actually had a really good experience on October 2nd covering Fightland live, and everyone is super amazing. So my question will be, what top 2 qualities do you look for in people when you're deciding to add them to the MLW family?
Yeah, it's a good question. When I first see them, it's usually on like a Twitter timeline. I'll see some, they're on a local show or something, and I'll be, well, those moves are physically impressive. And Then you do a deeper dive. What kind of character does this person have? And how they're wired really tells you a lot about, are they coachable? Are they ambitious? Can they balance all of that? Do they have those qualities that you see star potential? And if they're wired the right way and they can go bell to bell, my job's easy. It's just to showcase them, just to spotlight them, and find, sometimes package them, or sometimes give them a little confidence. But in general, you look for the qualities when you look for, do they have the it factor? And sometimes you see it, when you're looking through your timeline. Sometimes you have to talk to them. Sometimes you have to even have them out and work with them a little bit to see what a guy is made of. Some guys get the hype, and then you see them like, and they're not all that. They're guys that people sleep on, and they're the next big thing. Every process is a different process when it comes to the talent and the unique set of criteria it takes to kind of look at them and see what they got.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Marie. All right, next let's go to Darren Paltrowitz. Darren, are you there?
I am here. Thank you for taking the time. We got a two-parter, and the first one is, this is more of a compliment than a question, but it turns into a question, Court. And when we look at the original iteration of MLW and also the relaunch from a couple of years ago, we see so many future world champions on your roster. And I liken what you do to a really good A&R guy in the music business, where you sign the talent and you kind of find them before they're big stars. I'm curious, and this is a bit of an ego boost here, when you first noticed that you had a good eye for picking talent that hadn't yet been discovered.
I probably had an uneducated eye when I did the first era of MLW. There's something in my gut that said, okay, this guy is going to be special. And then Harry Smith wrestled when he was 18 for MLW. He was studying backstage for his midterms. He was in high school. He was a senior in high school, and he was with TJ Wilson, Tyson Kidd, who also I think was cramming in some studying in between matches. And guys like Rocky Romero, who was very young in his career. TJ P worked for us when he was probably like 19 years old. So over time, you kind of develop the skill set and can identify the talent and then help build them up. But I guess it was just something I kind of just stumbled into. But, one of the guys that really kind of motivated me or inspired me to be in wrestling is Paul Heyman, another Westchester guy here in New York who made it big. And, part of the key things that he did was find talent and accentuate their strengths and minimize their weaknesses and find them before anyone else does, whether it was Bubba Dudley or Taz or Joey Styles. And Sabu, and being able to showcase guys like Rey Mysterio and Psychosis before anyone did. He found the talent and just figured out how to package them and showcase them. So I was watching ECW as a middle schooler and high schooler, and it just clicked and it resonated with me. I guess he might have something to do with some of the blame for me getting into wrestling and chasing this dream, because he lives like 15 minutes from me. And I just like, this guy is doing a wrestling league. And it's funny because in 2001, I was just in the business for a year or two, maybe a little longer. And I was backstage at the last ECW pay-per-view alongside a few of the Samoan students, Gene Snitsky, among others. And we were all looking for jobs. And then this is at the Hammerstone Ballroom, Living Dangerously. And, you see Tommy Dreamer running around, Heyman running around, and then I'm like, oh man, just want to get some FaceTime and figure out if I can get a job here. Little did I know what was going on with ECW at the time, but my goal really in wrestling was just to always work for ECW. I wanted to, at a young age, that was my game plan. And then tragically, ECW went out of business, and so I never saw myself going down the road of being a promoter. My goal was just work for ECW, go wherever the hell that takes me. But then there was no ECW, and I didn't want to work for WWE or any other company. My thing was like, I want to do this thing that's a little bit lo-fi, more authentic, and a little more grassroots, and a little edgier as a result of that. And so none of the options really, there weren't many options, but none of them really spoke out to me. And really, realistically, I was too young to really have any interest from any of these companies. So MLW happened.
Thanks, Darren. All right, next we're going to go to James Walsh. James, are you there?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
We sure can. Go
Hey.
ahead.
All right. It's a pleasure to talk to you, Court. I'm a big fan. I've been a fan since the genesis of MLW, which was the first show. In fact, I still have it on VHS on my shelf behind me here. I know I'm not on cam, though. Anyway, the question I have actually dates back to the original MLW, because you often talked on this call itself when you guys first started, but you talk about this iteration, the 2017, and you also talk about learning from your time in AAA and WWE. But what did you learn from that first iteration, that very, I would say, ECW influenced heavy version of MLW back almost 20 years ago?
Now you know the story about why I was influenced by ECW. But yeah, it's, I didn't know how to book then. Like I was, like I had a feeling in my gut, but I couldn't really explain it. I couldn't express it, and I couldn't put it down on paper and kind of define it at 22. I hadn't honed my instincts, but I didn't have a mentor. I learned a lot about the business from Afa and Samu, who were incredibly helpful and patient with me, along with guys like Gary Albright and Doc Death. But I hadn't been around a booker and a real promoter. And so Terry Funk and then Gary Hart really were instrumental with that. And Gary Hart in particular really helped me understand and allowed me to be comfortable enough and confident enough to ask him always dumb questions. And he was so patient with answering all of them. And I learned more from Gary as a result, because in wrestling, sometimes people will, give you, bust your balls if you're asking too many questions. Gary would spend hours talking to me on the phone and just let me pick his brain. And that is one of the best parts of wrestling, is when people pass that knowledge forward. And that's kind of what I feel now is my responsibility, is to take guys and explain things and teach them and be able to pay that knowledge forward and not hold it back, but share it. It's invaluable. I was lost before I had Gary Hart and Terry Funk. They taught me so much. The lessons I learned from that era, I would say, to be more patient, which I think at 22, it's hard to go back and tell a 22-year-old, hey, be more patient. Because at 22, you're not going to be patient. You're going to just say, come on, take on the world like you're in Scarface. But it's certainly, every experience you have, good or bad, as long as you can look back and be honest and take something away from it, understand why it happened. And if it didn't work out the way you had hoped, then, okay, why was that? And then take that forward. Not live and be, chained to the past, but then take that experience, you lived it, take that knowledge forward, and for yourself and for others. And so I think that's just an invaluable thing you can do in life in general. It's like, yeah, that may have not gone as you had hoped, but maybe you can learn something from that to avoid it in the future, to help others avoid it or build on that in the future.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I do have one more question for you. How does this compare, Fightland airing on Vice TV to so many new eyes, to that first Genesis show in your mind?
Well, it's funny. I remember that first Genesis show. A lot of people thought, I guess I hyped it pretty good, because a lot of people thought that was going to be on pay-per-view. And they were like, it wasn't on pay-per-view. Where is this thing? No, I never said it would be, but it was such a stacked show. And this is a stacked show too. This is the culmination of a 2-year chase with Hammerstone and Fatu colliding. And I think, in terms of hype, it's pretty big. It's pretty big for us. Title versus title. Fatu's never lost. Hammerstone's had that national title since he won it. He's the inaugural champion. Both guys have reigns that go over 800, 900 days. And I think the core DNA of wrestling is building anticipation and then the collision course. And at Fightland, you're going to see a hell of a biblical collision course with these two. It's power versus chaos, and it's going to be fun to see which one ends up having its arm raised.
Can't wait to see it. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James. All right, let's go to Rob Samo. Rob, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you so much for having me today, Court.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm excited, man. I mean, I was a huge fan of Lucha Underground, used to attend those and cover them in person. And now here we are with MLW. MLW has this sense of very much a Eddie Guerrero or Dean Malenko style in its presentation, in that you're so good, if people hadn't noticed you before, they have to sit up and take notice now. and
Right.
pay attention to what you're putting out there. I mean, you have the Von Erichs there with you. You have Aztec Underground and everything else that's going on with it. When you put that level forward to be forced to take notice, how much of a greater victory is it than to say having X amount of dollars behind you that could get you a TV deal from the get-go? Is it more rewarding in that regard to build yourself up from this grassroots phenomena?
I think I was always inspired by the grassroots phenomenon, and how, you know, with that, yeah, it's a sense of being an entrepreneur and then building something and seeing that. And I think that from a business point of view, there's that for me. And then from a creative point of view, our journey has been one where I wouldn't trade for anything in the world, because you have to nurture every aspect of the creative, the talent, and develop them. And you're nurturing and developing the company as a whole, whether it's your streaming deals, your linear deals, licensing deals, toy deals, and it just takes a lot of patience in these small building blocks. I think that's a very difficult thing to do when there are two billionaires also in the mix, and they're very, very good at what they do. But to find our own lane and just under our mantra is just think different and dare to be different, and just really just trust the process. We go in there, we never get rattled. We just keep going forward. The plan for Fat 2 and Hammerstone, I told them this plan in February of 2020. And the plan was for Battle Riot to happen in July of 2020 in Philadelphia. Well, things didn't turn out that way due to the pandemic, but I stuck to that plan. And in July of 2021 in Philadelphia, Hammerstone won the Battle Riot and was on the same path to going at it with Fat 2 in the fall. So we really, when we have a plan, we stick to it. And that combined with kind of my Moneyball approach to talent, where you identify underutilized, underdeveloped, undiscovered talent, and make the most of them. That's been our calling card.
And from a selfish standpoint, I do need to ask, when will we see you out here on the West Coast? Whether it is actually in California, if California ever opens back up fully, or at least Las Vegas or Phoenix.
Well, actually, we just spoke with a casino out in Vegas. Could be early 22. We were actually supposed to do our first show in LA in mid to late 2020, and then everything happened. So it's kind of just dependent on the state of each state and the pandemic. That's why we're using Philadelphia as our residency. It seems to be stable. Everything seems to be pretty good with the numbers, and also just a lot of our talent is right now on the East Coast, so less people have to fly and everything. So as things get hopefully a little bit more back to normal and things open up, LA is one of the bigger markets on my list of towns to hit.
Well, we look to see you out here, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, thanks, Rob. All right, we'll go to our last question here, and fittingly, it is Mike Johnson. I see you pop up at the bottom.
Hello, I just saw that unmute button. How are you guys?
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Good. I got two questions for you. The first is, you had a couple of injuries over the course of the Fightland taping. Washington Post noted Alexander Hammerstone did indeed have a badly sprained ankle during the match with Fatu. Any updates on how everybody is and whether they're going to miss any ring time for MLW?
So yeah, Hammer got hurt in the first 5-6 minutes. You'll notice it. You might even see the referee give a thumbs up, which was a little too obvious. I was like, no, you don't actually have to give a full thumbs up. But yeah, he had a nasty sprain. We didn't know at the time how bad it was. And during the match, Fatu a few times said, "Hey, Oos, you want to go home early? It's fine." And Hammerstone said, "If you know, we're going to keep on going." I mean, that guy is tough. He's tenacious, and he wasn't going to let that deny him what happened in that moment. So he will be back probably good to go in a few weeks, definitely by our November show. At least that's what we anticipate. Nicole Savoy had a pretty concerning injury. She got stretchered out of the building, and I believe it was a strained sternum. And she'll have some rest, and I think in a few weeks she'll be fine. It was so scary. We thought multiple ribs fractured. We didn't know. And thankfully, we always have at least one, if not two, doctors on site. So when a doctor has to, tend to someone backstage, there's always a doctor ringside, which I like. It's part of the athletic commission mandatory criteria. So that was important, and they were tending to Nicole until she was taken away by an ambulance to the local hospital. And then there was TJP tweaked his knee. I think he'll be okay in a few weeks. I don't think it's a major thing. Somehow I tweaked my knee. I'm 43 and out of shape. So I think that's our injury report. I don't even know how I did it. Try running around, but with those kind of moments, it's we had a great streak without any injuries, and then bam, they all hit. So it happens. One of the nicer moments, and I don't want to give away anything, but after we go off the air, Hammerstone is heading to the back, and as a kind of on the fly moment, his girlfriend, who he's been with forever, happened to be at the first MLW show she's ever gone to, and she was backstage and said, I want to get you out there and give him a hug. And he's limping to the back. He had no idea she was going to be on stage, and she greeted him, gave him a hug and a kiss, and everything they've gone through. I thought it was such a nice moment, a nice surprise for both of them to give them that. They're both wonderful people, and to see a couple like that and everything they've endured be together in a moment like that at Fightland was pretty special. For me, it was one of the most touching moments in wrestling. I've been around a long time, and I'm just glad she came out to be a part of Fightland. She's a great girl, and Hammer's a great guy.
All right, and then I just got one more question for you. Obviously, we're all here to talk about Fightland. We kind of have a baseline idea of what wrestling does on Vice, thanks to Dark Side of the Ring. Internally and personally for yourself, what do you expect the viewership to be, and where do you hope the viewership will be for? Obviously, you want 10 million people to watch, but for yourself, at what level of viewership are you satisfied given you're nurturing this relationship with Vice?
You look at like what would be a win, right? And I guess for me, it is probably about, I'd say if we can retain 50% of the audience, that would be pretty impressive for me. We'll see if that happens. Dark Side does really good numbers. You look at what they do on 10 p.m. after Dark Side. If we can get a retention number in that ballpark of anywhere from 40 to 50%, I'd be very happy.
All right. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. That will do it for our media call for today. Court, did you have anything else you wanted to leave the folks with?
No, I'll say this, that without you guys, the really MLW wouldn't be where it's at. It's to cover our talent, to take an interest in a league when you have so many other noisy competitors out there is something that's not lost on me. And so every time you give us coverage, and it's the honest coverage, good or bad, it means a lot to me. And I thank you for your interest in MLW and our unique journey as we try to elbow our way in the room with two big titans in there. And at the same time, being able to spotlight and showcase our talent. And I think tomorrow night's a very special night. And part of that night is, the culmination of a 2-year journey for two wrestlers, but also for the company as we reach another milestone and now embark on what's on the other side of that, which we're very excited about. And so then bring the media along for the ride with MLW Embedded. We'll see if I'm regretting that come Friday morning to see if they talk about MLW or not, or what the stories are. But I'm really excited because I think wrestling deserves to have news coverage be a part of a TV experience. And it hasn't. I mean, every other sport, MMA, NFL, every sport has a news segment or a news show on broadcast. And it's just, I guess promoters just want to be able to control things. And I get that. But for us, it's a unique opportunity to be daring and try something where I have no control over what's going on in that segment. And so I'm excited to see what the stories are, the topics are. But this is the time to shake it up, and that's what MLW is going to do at Fightland on Thursday night on Vice. So with that, I hope you guys enjoy the broadcast, and thank you all for your coverage and for joining us today.